the bush is also a tight fit inside there. So when that's together, that will nicely fit inside the box and will be a tight fit, and there'll be no play in it at all, and it will still allow it to go up and down. Now, this is quite a precise system, and we've drilled for you all the important holes. It does mean that you've got a little bit more drilling to do, because so as to get all the holes in there to line up precisely, then it means that you've got to drill 2 of the other key holes. So basically, that'll go in there. There is only half of this back member. This back member isn't a complete box, it's only half the box. And as it fits in, could we just come down here with the camera, please? So if I just lift this chassis up, then you'll be able to see quite clearly that when that is inside that box, okay, so we can see that that will go into there like that, and then the back will go in against this back angle member. And what will happen early on in this setup, we'll put the bolts in there temporary. So we'll just take out that for a second, and we'll put the inner tubes in. You will need to deburr these inner tubes before you start. So we'll put the inner tubes in, and we put that in there like that, and in there. Remember, it is quite a tight fit, and you may need just to file something. That goes in there. And that then goes down there, so that that hole lines up. And then you'll need something like an old Phillips screwdriver to line up the knot. I don't get one. You'll need something like a punch or a Phillips screwdriver to line this hole up. Like so. And then you'll just pop the bolt through to make sure it is truly bolt in the front square member. We then put the bolt in the back member. That goes through the hole, and you've just got to juggle the wishbone around to get it through the tube. Just tap it through slightly. Remember, it may be a good idea to use old 10mm bolts for this exercise. So that goes through there like that, and you can see that the bolts come through there. What happens now is that we must now take out this bolt, because it has only acted as a dummy bolt. So we're going to take this out of the hole like that. We need to drill a hole right the way through this box. Now this means that we need to get a pencil or a felt tip pen, and we need to put it through that hole, assuming that that hasn't moved, which it hasn't, through the hole, and mark the other side of the box. Well, that's not quite as easy as what we think. Now what I was hoping to get a felt tip pen that was exactly 10mm in diameter, that I could pop through that hole and mark it precisely. Unfortunately, this is a 12mm felt tip pen, but I have seen them that's 10mm. And unfortunately, a pencil or a ballpoint pen is too thin. But we need that to go through there, and we need to mark on the other side of it. So I'm very carefully drawing a circle around there, exactly where it needs to be, like that. So I'm marking that like so. And then, at the same time, I'm going to pop the bolt back in the hole. That goes back in there. I'm now going to tap that bolt back through there like that. And I'm going to come to the supplementary brackets that you'll get in a battery of 4 like that. And what will happen is you'll break one bracket off, like so. One of these brackets you've taken off the strip. That bracket now goes up there, hard up to the metal bush, to the metal inner tube, and then back like that. We've already got that one marked, and we come to the back one now, and we take out this temporary bolt that we've put in there. You may need to unscrew it out, or you can pull it out. We take out that bolt, like so. Then along the same lines as we mark through that side, we mark through there with a pencil or a felt tip pen, and we're looking to get to the centre of that hole. At the same time, it's a good idea to mark that fixing just there, or in this case, we could drill it now while it's in position. We could get the drill and we could drill through there like that, ready to put that 8mm bolt through the top of there. So we're ready now to drill the 2 other holes. So we take this apart like that. We take this out as well. Take out the wishbone. And we hopefully can see through there where we've marked that with the felt tip pen. So I can just see that. And as we look at this bracket, again, we'll look in there and we can just see where we've marked that with the felt tip pen or pencil. We now need to drill a pilot hole with an 1/8 drill, and the pilot hole is really important. It's the only way you're going to get this fitted precisely. So I'm going to drill in the chuck and with the drill as far out of the chuck as possible, because I need to reach to the back of this tube. I'm looking through there and I'm drilling dead on the part where I've marked it with a pen. Okay, and at the same time I'm going to drill the other hole in the other plate that we marked. And now we're going to swap the drill for that 10.5 drill. So we've now got the 10.5 drill in, and we're going to drill the hole in this first, which is easy. Remember, don't drill we now come to drill the hole in this box just here. So we're going through that hole there, through there, and into that pilot hole. Now, what is important is whilst we're drilling that hole, we don't finish up making this front hole too large. So what I suggest you do is you get your mini grinder and you take the edge off the drill just here. So where it doesn't matter, you grind that sharp edge off the drill. That leading edge off the spiral, you just take that off with a mini grinder, so that when you go through this hole like this, through there like that, you're not drilling into the side wall of the box. All that's common sense, I hope you understand that. So we're drilling through there, very slowly, a little bit at a time. So that now is the holes drilled, ready to put the top wishbone in. So we're going to put that in now permanently. So with the 4 bushes in the wishbone, we're going to put the inner tube into the front one only at this stage. What I would say is these Nylasper bushes are supposed to revolve around the inner tube without any lubrication at all. We're not certain yet, but we feel that's probably the case. What I would say, it might be a good idea to put some oil or grease onto these, because what it'll mean is that if the car is standing, then these won't seize up. So that may be something, I haven't checked this fully yet, but I think that would be quite in order. So we're now going to just tap this in. Remember, it is quite a tight fit, and don't forget to deburr the tube on the inside. So this is going to be tapped in like that. Those of you who want to paint or have your wishbones nylon coated or powder coated, just make sure you fit them all first. So this type of work, you're not banging and clanging and chipping the paint off before you do it. So we're lining that up now, and we can now put the bolt right the way through, like so. And we'll just pop a nut on that side temporarily so as it doesn't move. And then with the back one now, we can just pop in that inner tube like that. And then with another bolt from the other side, we will just need to line it up. Like so, that's good. Goes through there, and you can see that the bolt comes through there like that, and then providing we've drilled that hole in the right place, then that goes on there like so and comes through like that. That's coming through there. Obviously we need to put a nut on there, and then we've drilled through that before. Obviously we drilled through that either now or again and put a nut and bolt through there, and that then is a top wishbone in position, and it feels quite nice, quite taut. You may just need to have to trim off that back of that box a little bit just there to make sure that it clears the wishbone, but this provisionally does work and seems to be okay. It's fitted just like the top wishbone, same again, the nylon spar bushers in both sides, the inner tube in the middle, that's deburred. Through there, the same process of projecting through the holes and drilling through, the same just here, and then often you need to put spacing washers in between the angle at the back and the nylon spar bushers, and then you've got the same bracket, same type of bracket, bolted on there, projected through and drilled, that's all bolted on. We then come to the shock absorber. Again, that's pretty straightforward. The hole in that small box there is already drilled for you. You will need, it is drilled to, it's a 3/8 hole, it's a 3/8 hole in the tube in the shock absorbers. You will need to pack the shock absorber out on both sides with the washers that we supply. You may need just to stick them on with sticky tape to hold them together while you push them up inside that box like that. Make sure you deburr inside the box, put the 3/8 bolt through, and then when you tighten up the bolt, then you will probably just nip the sides of the box together, probably by a couple of mil, and that will trap the tube, as we've always said, and then the shock absorber will move on the inner tube around the rubber. We're now going to look at another chassis that's the next stage on. So we'll just move on to another chassis that's a little bit more completed than this one. That's a little bit more advanced, and you can see that we've got the shock absorber fixed on like that, and onto the bottom of it we've bolted that lower shock absorber bracket, and you'll see that we've already drilled the 2 holes in the bracket prior to bolting it up. Again, don't forget to put the supplementary washers either side of the rubber at the bottom. Now we've come to the steering rack, and we've now changed the rack on both all the packages now, so that they've all got the same steering shaft. It is a shorter rack on the plus back with the double wishbone suspension, and it is supplemented by some extensions to the actual track rods. But again, we've got the steering shaft with the square block on it, we've got that there, and we've got the universal joint already pressed on and fitted on to the rack. Now we've pressed that on, and we really don't want you to take that off. If you leave that on, it would be advantageous. We come now to fit the rack, and that is pretty straightforward, in so much that we can feed it in like so. Just lift up that shock absorber, and that goes in there like that. Underneath there, and in there like that, and then it sits onto this rack mounting plate that has got the 4 holes already pierced in it, and that sits down there nicely on that. And then there is 1 U-bolt and a pair of ordinary bolts that hold it in position. That's quite easy to fit. So we've got we've come to fit the rack, and on the off side of the car we put the U-bolt. That goes round there like that, pretty straightforward. Washer underneath and a 10mm nut. Same as the side. Washer underneath and another 10mm nut. Remember that these can be tightened up quite tight, and they ideally need to have a locking nut on. Two ordinary 8mm nuts on this side, and that's again bolt underneath, and then the rack is firmly tightened up, and that's a rack in for keeps. With regards to the ends of the rack, you'll be given in your kit a pair of track rod ends and 14mm extension thread and a double-ended extension tube. One end of the tube has got the correct thread to thread on there like that, a fine metric thread, and the other is a coarse. It screws into there like that, and then you have got locking nuts supplied for all ends, so you've got locking nuts for this end, you've got locking nuts for that end, rod on the right side. So you could supplement this system with a nice piece of chrome tube to cover up that thread from the elements that would go on like that. It's just a bit of bathroom tube, the kind of thing you would get from DIY shops, so that could go over that. But the most important thing is that when you do put this track rod end on, there's a tremendous amount of adjustment in this system. Make sure it's threaded well on, but they are handed these track rod ends, so you can see that they are bent out that way, and that is the correct track rod end. Can you see that, cameraman, the way it's bent out against that one that's bent in?
Yeah. So
it's bent out, and that's the one that you need for the offside of the car. So that covers that quite well. I'm going to move on now to the top suspension joint, and that is quite interesting, a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to show you what we call, hopefully the cameraman can see this, we call this the dummy McPherson strut. If you can just zoom up to that, can you see it? That has a tapered bush in it. The taper is perfect to take the taper on this top ball joint, and that pushes into that like that, and then the locking nut goes in the inside, that goes down there like that, and the locking nut goes down there like that, and all that is then bolted together. Now it's a little bit tricky getting the nut on. There's no getting away from that. It's a little bit tricky getting the nut on. A pair of snipe nose pliers, something like that to get it started, and then you'll need a socket, the exact size socket that fits that nut. Could be an 18mm, I think, I'm not sure, but the socket will fit that. It needs to be a thin wall socket to tighten it up. Now, one really important part on this type of joint, this top suspension joint, and the track rod ends, this is something that's well known to people with experience, but if you're a beginner into this thing, then you won't know. This system works well in so much that the taper on that joint is intended to be pulled into that, and when it's pulled down tight, it jams in position, and then that centre pin doesn't turn, and you can put that nut on and you can tighten it up. Now where the system goes wrong is that all these joints are supplied with a nylon locking nut, and you can see the nylonness of the nut in the end. In this case it's blue, sometimes it's white, sometimes it's red. So you can see it there. The trouble is that when you reach the nylon part of the nut, there is great resistance, as you imagine there would be, so that it won't come off. So there's great resistance, and what happens is that unfortunately often that the whole thing starts to turn before that taper has bitten into that tapered sleeve. So in order to get it so you can tighten the nut up, you really need to give that a sharp blow with a hammer. So if you hit that with a hammer, often that jams it in, and then you can tighten the nut up. Now, it sometimes doesn't work that well because no matter what you do, it keeps turning. So what you can do is you could fire loads of washers down there, like so, so that you've only got a little bit of thread showing. You've only got a little bit of thread showing, and then you tighten the nut up like that before it reaches the nylon. And what it means is that pulls that taper, you see it clearly there, it pulls the taper deep into the tapered socket and jams in. Then you can take the nut off, take the washers off. Because that's jammed in tight, then that means then that you can pull it down tight, and that does the trick. So the same thing applies to the trap rod end. Another thing is that if you've got it in position like that and you apply a lot of pressure onto that, that also helps to do it.
Go.
Robin Hood until you need to replace this joint. There may not be any reason to take that apart, so you can tighten it up tight. That joint will move on there now, like so, and it also will rotate right round like that. So that's together like that. Now just put that down there for a second. Now before we actually put that into the top wishbone, we've got the bottom wishbone to fix and that shock absorber mounting. Now remember, we've got that saddle on there like that, and we've got the two holes drilled there like that. So that's ready to fix that on. But we won't fix that on yet. We'll leave that floating like that. We'll carry on now and we'll put this into that end of that top wishbone tube. So that thread's in there like that, and it's a good idea to put a little bit of light oil or grease onto it so that it doesn't seize up, and if you need to take it out to adjust your camber, then it's quite easy to do. So you're going to screw that in, probably leave an inch of thread and wind the lock nut up. Remember, at the end of the day, you've got to tighten that lock nut up. So that goes in there like that. Now the next thing is that we're going to now move towards the stub axle. Now I've got a stub axle here ready to go on for this side, and you'll have to excuse me because I haven't cleaned it up. It's just virtually as it came off the donor vehicle, and we've got this so that conveniently it's been stripped, the discs off it, and it's quite easy to manoeuvre. And we will take off take out the bolt, the pinch bolt that goes in there like that. And that quite simply can be popped on the bottom of there like that. We've got the correct taper there, and that goes on there like so. And then we go on to put the locking nut on the bottom and tighten it up. Now I'm going to put a load of washers on the bottom there because I don't want to commit myself to putting that on, tightening it up so it's difficult to get off. So if you just bear with me a second, I'll put a load of washers to fix that, and then you'll be able to see how it all works. So we're going to temporarily put these washers on there like that and put the nut on so we can carry on and assemble this. So we've got that on there like that. We put that nut on. If we pull that nut up tight now, we'd be able to seat that taper and then take it off and it would be fixed, then we could put it on tight. But anyway, we've got that on there like that, and we'll take this opportunity of putting this track rod end on as well. Now remember, unlike the sliding pillar, We don't need to cut any off that stub axle at the bottom, and we don't need to alter that taper for that track rod end there. So you don't have to, this goes in from the original place, from underneath like that. Again, we'll just pop a few washers on there. These washers are only temporary, remember, just so that we can assemble it. They'll come off and they'll be tightened down without afterwards. So that goes on there like that. Now, you can see exactly what's happening now. We now have the stub axle onto the bottom wishbone, and we've connected up the track rod end. We've now got the top ball joint pushed into there, and it's assembled, screwed into there, and it's assembled now with the dummy McPherson strut on it. It's important that the dummy McPherson strut is fitted the right way. There's two ways you can fit it. One with the taper pointing out the way, so that's the widest part. Can you see that, cameraman? The widest part of that taper there, that must face inwards. So that's got to face inwards towards the engine with none of the taper showing at all from that side. That's quite important. That must be like that. And you'll see that when you've got it all together, the reason why. We'll do that once more before we finish. Now what happens now is that the next thing you're going to fit now is a cycle wing bracket. We fit the cycle wing bracket very similarly as we did with the other suspension system, the sliding pillar. And there is a bracket over there. You can see it's been painted red quite clearly. And that now goes on next over the dummy McPherson strut, sits on top of the stub axle just as it did before, and then we bend that tag down into that recess just there, drill through it and put a nut and bolt through it. So that's the next thing to go on if you're going to fit cycle wings. That bracket again, we'll just show you that bracket, cameraman, please. That is important because that bracket is in fact the near side and not the off side. But we'll look at that on the complete car later on. That is a near side bracket. Okay, you can see the way it's made. That's the near side bracket. Now we come back to put this together, and we can lift that up gently, and that should go in there like that. Just to make it a little bit easier, what we'll do, we've taken that bolt out of there, we've got a chisel there, we'll just lightly tap that with a chisel to open that up like that. And then we'll see that when we do come to fit this, then it will go in quite easily. And that goes right in there like that. We can just, now we've got it started, we'll just take the chisel out, I'll spring to, and that needs to go right up into there as tight as it'll go, obviously trapping that cycle wing bracket if you've got cycle wings. And then we're going to put that 19mm spanner size bolt in, a pinch bolt, and that then we tighten that up now, and that pinch clamp will clamp that McPherson strut, the dummy McPherson strut as we call it, that will clamp that quite tightly and quite strongly. Remember, we're also advising people to drill through that casting there, it's a forging, through that forging, and put a nut and bolt through it, an 8mm nut and bolt through there, just to make super sure that that never comes out. So towards the end of your build, one of your last jobs, drill through that and put an 8mm or a 6mm nut and bolt, but feel through the other side first to make sure you're not going to encroach on the pin. So that now is the stub axle on. I'll just straighten it up a little bit like that so it's square. Now what really has to happen now is you can't do an awful lot more to this until you put your brake disc on and you get your wheels on, because with it sitting on the floor then you'll be able to see that you'll be able to adjust this in and out to get your caster right, sorry, your camber right. That there's a lot of adjustment on that. You can adjust that to get your camber, but you need to have it on the floor and you need to have the wheels on. So with the chassis at the right height from the floor, that's about 6.5 inches or 7 inches from the floor, and the wheels on, we're then going to adjust that so that the wheel is upright, or if you're going to use a spirit level, the top of the wheel wants to be really tipping in just 1/4 inch. The difference between the top of the wing and the bottom of the wing needs to be 1/4 inch. And obviously you want to adjust the track so that the wheels for this exercise are pointing directly ahead. If anything, they want to be slightly toeing in. So remember, the degree of toeing is 1 to 2% toeing. With all that done then, it means you've still got to fix this lower suspension seat. This lower shock absorber seat. And that means that this is going to give you an awful lot of adjustment on this, how the car sits, depending on where you want to drill this seat, this bottom plate. So it's pretty straightforward. You'll see then, without any snag at all, that you can have lots of holes in the bottom of this plate. It's quite a substantially thick plate. I think it's 6mm thick. So you can drill into it and you can bolt that, and it's the kind of thing you can almost stop at the side of the road and jack your car up and move this up into another hole that you've drilled to get the right height correct. That nicely just misses the spring just there in this lower position. Once you've actually brought that up like that, then that moves away and clears the spring even better. But it must clear the spring, particularly for the SVA test. Then of course you've still got all the adjustment for the 2 locking nuts just there to adjust the height and the hardness of the springs and things like that. So that basically covers the front suspension assembly. Without any doubt, during the course of the build of your Robin Hood 2B with the plus back suspension, you will have this dummy McPherson strut out of that socket 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times to adjust that to get it right. And once you've done it once, it's quite easy to do. Undo the bolt, tap in your small wedge, that comes out, twist it round a few turns and put it back in again. It's better to do that than to do the system that you undo the bolt from in the middle of that and you take that out. But having said that, we've done that, but we did make a special socket to go in there to do that. So you will find that even when you think you've got it right, by the time you've gone out, gone around the block, come back again, it's settled in a slightly different position. You've got to readjust it again. So be prepared to spend some time moving that in and out. But every time, don't forget to lock that lock the lock nut up. And then remember that when the wheel is in its natural position, when the car's sat there in your drive, then the pin from that top ball joint must be in a neutral position. It's no good having that round the opposite way, so it's hard up one side and the suspension doesn't work. Remember, I'd really like to see you not have the shock absorber on and move the suspension up and down to make sure everything works. Don't forget, all the washers that you see here are only temporary. They want to be removed, and those nylon locking nuts want to be tightened up tight. That's really important. This is a steering column assembly from a mid-age Ford Sierra. You recognise the centre panic button, the stalks, the wheel with the centre horn push, and the sliding telescopic shaft, and the remnants of the troublesome steering column bush. We maintain that for the SVA test it's advantageous to retain this steering wheel. Although we give you a steering wheel in the kit, we feel that to go with this steering wheel will enhance your chances of passing without any problems. Initially it is already type approved. For definite, all the radiators are correct, and all the area behind the steering wheel and for a measurement outside the steering wheel are all exempt. So that's not anything that's behind the wheel, and anything that's around the wheel for a fixed measurement is exempt, which means you've got a larger area of the inside of the car that you don't have to worry about at all. You've taken it off, to have dropped that on the floor and to send that triangular shaft up inside there, so that when you come to fit it into your car you think it's too short. So that's important, guard against that. I can see there that there's about 8 inches or 9 inches showing, so you want the similar amount. What I would say at this stage now, it is advantageous to disregard totally this steering column bush that's on it and buy a new one, because we've already lost the outer ring of that, and that's gone. And they're very, very inexpensive. These are available from us for only £2.50. So we can supply the steering column bush kit for £2.50, or you can go along and you can get one from your accessory shop, probably a bit more expensive than that, or probably triple if you go to a Ford agent. So there is a steering column bush kit, and it's definitely worth buying. So there's the 3 pieces. You see there is the 3 parts of the steering column bush kit. That is the steering column bush bracket that you do get in your kit. So to assemble this, that goes in there like that. That rubber outside goes in there like that. And then the plastic ring goes on the inside of it. Ring goes in from the back. That's in there quite firmly. Now, this, not on the chassis, you need to tap that washer flat again to give it another lease of life. So you need to flatten that washer. And what happens is then, that's the old bush, don't use that. The new bush goes onto the shaft like that. Sorry, the washer gets pushed onto the shaft like that. The new bush goes on, and then this bush goes from the driver side down there, down the shaft, and into that inner centre. And then that rotates round there like that. And to stop that coming out, we then slide that spring washer back along the triangular shaft. And that fixes that. Now, many a Ford Sierra has failed its MOT test because of that bush, and that's a favourite point for MOT examiners and SV examiners to look at the steering to check it's okay. What is important is that to pass the SVA test, the steering column has to be telescopic, which the Ford Sierra one is. And basically, if the SVA's examiner can see this bush in your chassis, then he'll recognise that bush as being the Ford Sierra part, and he'll know that you've got a proper telescopic steering column. You won't be in a situation where you've got difficulty proving it. If he can see that bush, see that spring washer, then he'll be happy straight away. So that is how the bush fits. That's the spring washer, that's the shaft. I'm not going to dwell on that anymore, because for the assembly of this now, I'm going to leave this off for speed. So that's going to go to one side. If by any chance that spring washer has broke or you've lost it, what you could do is put a small Jubilee clip on that triangular shaft to stop that plastic bush coming apart. Okay, we're going to move on now to the steering column, and we're going to put the steering column in exactly as it is now. I'm leaving it with the wheel on, I'm leaving it with the column switches on. And this is now going to go in, and we're going to assume then that without any modification, either we don't need to pull that in or push it out anymore, that will slide in that nylon bush inside that. We can leave that in that position. So we come now to fit this on the car. So at this stage we'll just